Well, welcome to Developing Intuition. My name's Julie. This is our beginner level diving into intuition. We will be having another segment in the upcoming month, which will be more an intermediate, more in depth. But this will serve more as an way of just getting your feet wet and an overall view of developing intuition. So, first thing that I think everyone asks is, do we all have the ability to be intuitive? And the answer is yes. Some people it's more natural for, other people really need to focus in, but we all have the ability to be intuitive. And I will be going over different ways that we can receive information. Again, some things might come more naturally to people, but again, it's something that everyone can tap into, receive. It's just like practicing, warming up, getting into the groove with that. So, intuition, what is it? The definition of intuition, it's essentially just the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. So you just know. You disconnect from the active mind, and this is hard for some people. So how do we do this? So, a lot of it just comes down to trust. It comes down to faith. A lot of it has to do with accepting that there's a higher purpose to everything. Another key thing when you're doing this is just completely releasing expectations. When you come into something with expectations, you start using your active mind. You're just serving the flow. You're interpreting. You want to let go and just let everything come in naturally. A lot of times we let our ego come into play, where we start. Perhaps we don't like what's coming through, so we start to. Even though we know what's coming through, we start tailoring it to the outcome that we want. So what you want to do is you want to quiet the mind, disconnect from the ego, disconnect from that analytical brain, and just relax. A lot of times if we can go through processes where you can, what we call raise your vibration. So, you're bringing in energy, and in order to do this, we want to raise our vibration, and easy ways to start doing that would be breath work. We can go over some things later on what to do. Meditation. It doesn't have to be this 2-hour long meditation, but you can take a few minutes just to quiet your mind, go through a simple meditation, again, something that we can touch on towards the end as well. Yoga. I'm actually a yoga teacher. I find that when you begin to start coordinating your movement with your breath, what that does is it naturally slows down the central nervous system, and then that automatically quiets the mind, gets you moving, brings yourself into the present moment. So you start leaving what happened in the past, yesterday, 2 seconds ago. You stop worrying about what's going on in the future, what's to come, what you need to do, the to-do list. You're in the present moment. Perfect to start receiving messages, and clearly, and without starting to contort them with, your own, that mind. Once you've quieted the mind, the most important thing is being aware and paying attention. You are constantly, throughout the day, receiving messages. Synchronistic of events, synchronicity. Look at those moments where perhaps you were thinking of something and then something showed up. You were thinking of someone and then they called you. There's a reason for that. Or a lot of times people will say, I hear a lot of people where they'll notice certain times on the clock. It might be like 11:11. Or you have, trying to think of some other way, or you're in the midst of doing something and then all of a sudden you see a hawk, there's a bird, or you see all of a sudden you're randomly a white feather on the floor. All these things have meanings. You're not expected to know what they all mean. I will be honest, when I first started doing this and I was I really was actively developing my intuition, I would literally, first I would one thing, keep a notebook and pen with you all the time because you want to write it down, especially when we get into some other things. When we start talking about dreams, there you go, notebook in hand. When we start talking about dreams, right when you wake up, keep that pen and paper by the bed. I carry a small little tiny notebook in my purse with a pen, and even as I'm driving, I'll literally pull off on the side of the road. But when you see things and synchronistic events happen, you want to first write down what were you doing or thinking about seeing, what was on your mind at the time. Then write down what occurred that stood out to you. And trust me, it will stand out to you because you are paying attention, you are aware, and it's not normal. So times, the animals, perhaps they mean something to you already. If not, I can't tell you how many times I've gone on Google and just type in, hawk meeting or 1111. There's some, and then here's the thing too. Go with, don't think it through. Don't start scrolling through what's the best one that I'm going to pick. What's the first one that just jumped out at you? Click on it. No thought necessary. We're totally detaching from our active mind. The energy, our spirit guides, our angels, they can manipulate electronic. What just jumped out at you? What are you seeing? Click on it. Sometimes too, I find if I'm not meant to be reading that, like what I'm reading makes absolutely no sense. It's like, okay, that doesn't apply to me, but like one thing might stand out. That's the message you're supposed to get. It will resonate with you. Write it down. Then all of a sudden it becomes, every time you see that, now you already know what that means. It's more instant. So you don't need that notebook as much anymore. But in the beginning, when you start, you're almost establishing a form of communication. So now it's like, okay, so when you want me to know that I'm on the right path, I'm going to see 1111. If there's a strong life lesson coming my way, I'm going to see a hawk. Something good's about to happen. I'm seeing a chipmunk run across my path right now, and that has happened. So it's just very important when you're developing this. Pay attention, and I find the notebook very, very important.
How long did it take you once you started actually grounding into that?
Well, it became just a total influx. It was when I decide, and another thing as well, if you set the intention that, okay, I am open, I'm ready to receive information, and when I say receive information, I'm talking, spirit guide. This comes from all of a loving place. Everything that comes in when you lead with a pure heart, good intention. I'm not saying somebody show me what the winning lottery ticket is. When you are like, show me, because essentially we're looking for direction on our life path. And when you're leading in that way, the messages that you're receiving are coming from your highest and most loving self. They're coming from your angels. They're coming from your spirit guides, the archangels. You're being protected. And the thing is too is, it's almost like a rule of thumb. They're not going to come in and help you unless you ask. They're always there, always there. But unless you ask them, this is a whole other topic, but you can always ask for help and guidance. But if you set the intention like, hey, your days are perhaps before this flowing together, they're running together, and now all of a sudden you're stopping and you're saying, okay, you know what, I'm ready for some direction. I'm ready for some guidance. And as we start going through the different ways of receiving information, my suggestion is going to be go with what resonates with you. Go with what feels natural. Start there. And then there are a lot of ways of even just spinning off of the things I'm going to be going through to help you connect even more and creative ways that work for you. Because it's like with everything that you do, we're all drawn to different things, and the things that you're drawn to and you love and you're passionate about is what you're going to excel at and what's going to really work for you. So let me just stop for a moment. We're going to go with what ways do we receive information? So you might hear some people that do deal with this a lot. They're going to talk about the clairs. So we're going to be going over, there are 4 clairs, and then there's also another aspect, which would be someone who's an empath, which is very similar to one of the clairs that I'll get into, and there's a slight difference between the two of them, and so someone who's empathic, we'll go through that. I'm going to save those for the last. So the first one that we have is clairvoyant. And I would say that would be someone who would have the clear ability for sight, for vision. So you have very strong visualization abilities. And when I say that, it's more of something that's in your mind's eye. It's your third eye. So when we talk about our third eye, we're also referencing our chakras. Again, save that. That's a whole other lecture topic for next month. But our third eye is, this is where we can receive information. So you're seeing things in the mind's eye, like pictures, symbols, different visions. And a frequent avenue, especially when you're beginning, and something that might be happening already, which I touched on a little bit ago with keeping the journal, is you can receive a lot of information in your dreams. So this is a very frequent avenue for your angels or spirit guides or even loved ones to communicate with you. And the reason for that is that when we're sleeping, our logical minds are resting. So what this is letting our subconscious mind do is it's allowing it to just freely accept all the guidance that's coming in, all the information that's coming in. What I would suggest doing is before you go to sleep, set the intention that you are open to receiving information and that you want to be able to remember it when you wake up. I'm just going by my personal, what I do. Everyone's different. Play around with it. I've asked for guidance and I'm sure I got it. It's just sometimes when we wake up, it's harder to remember. Also, when you do wake up, or if you wake up in the middle of the night, just jot it down. Whatever stood out to you, jot it down. Because trust me, even if you're like, oh, I remember it, let me go, and I've done this, let me go brush my teeth real quick and I'll start getting ready for work, and then before I go, I'll write down what I remembered. You're not going to remember it. You're not going to remember the fine details. It completely begins to escape you, at least for me. So I would say wake up in the middle of the night. First thing when you wake up, and usually these things will wake you up. You're half awake. Write it down. It doesn't matter how crazy it is. And again, it might not have meaning, but another thing that's cool too is all of a sudden, a month from now, after you wrote that, you start looking at this history. And another thing that I find as well is, especially when you're asking for help or guidance, and I talk about how you start interpreting it, it's not really how you wanted it to be. It usually ends up that you get guided to something, like, because in your mind, we're human. We all set goals. We're goal driven. We want, okay, I want to be able to do this, and then I'm going to map that out, and this is how I'm going to do it. We plan for it, and usually that plan is not as good as what the big picture is supposed to be. It's like, you ask for something very general, and then you're like, like, that's not how I thought it was going to be. And I thought I would be happier. Sometimes when you map it out and then you finally get there, we all find, like, we're still not satisfied. So then we take another goal, and then we start working towards that. And this is using our analytical, active mind. And we're like, I still don't feel fulfilled. I still don't feel, like this is where I'm supposed to be. And this is where that intuitive, nature comes in, and you open yourself up to possibilities. And then you say to yourself, give a very broad ending. I want to be able to support myself and do what I love, whatever that may be. And then give me signs and follow your intuition. And trust me, I'm sitting here right now. This was not planned. This is like dream for me. It's like to be able to talk about something and share with people something that I love and have that opportunity. So clairvoyant, that's one. one of the clairs. Next one, clairaudient. So this would be something where you have the ability for what I would call clear hearing, psychic hearing. So now you are audibly hearing things that other people cannot. It can be something that's as subtle as maybe you start hearing like soft music. I've heard at times when I've meditated, I've heard like native flutes. It's very subtle. It could be something a little more intense where you actually hear audibly voices. Also, I feel grouped in with being clairaudient, you might find that audible things resonate with you more. So you might, as something's happening, pay attention to songs that are playing. Or maybe you start thinking of, like, all of a sudden a song starts playing in your head that you haven't heard in years upon years, but then all of a sudden it's like, wait, like the words of that have meaning. One thing I would suggest if you are trying to develop clairaudience, you can set boundaries, and this goes with any of them. So if something starts freaking you out, as I progress through this, I personally am not as big of a fan of hearing voices aloud. I hear more of like an intuitive, like voices in my head. I don't like as much of the audible. So you can actually say, I'm not comfortable with this. So, please don't communicate in this way. And you can set limits and boundaries. And I think that's important when you're working with any of these forms of receiving messages. And you can even, as we move through this as well, you can even establish, like, if you're trying to, work with clairaudience, you can say, for a yes, give me a little ringing noise in my ear. For a no, so you can play around with it. You can set, you have control over this. It's not something that's out of your control. It's nothing to be scared of.
So what is the ringing in the ear?
So a lot of times, I will get ringing in my ear or it's almost like sometimes as well, when you're on an airplane and your ear starts the pressure starts changing, and then I get a ringing in my ear. It's usually something that I need to pay attention to, that someone's saying. And so those types of things, again, like I've heard music, it's usually when I'm meditating or, sometimes with like, again, another topic, but if you're doing like past life regression or things that tie in, but the ringing, and I think also for everyone it's different. So perhaps, when we get into like the clairsentient where you're starting to feel, like I sometimes a tapping on the shoulder might mean something different to me than perhaps it might mean for you. And these are things where when you're getting these sensations, you want to confirm, and you don't have to speak aloud. You can speak in your head, you can say it in your mind, like, you can feel tingling in the fingers, or, we'll get to that though. So, clairaudient. I think you got a good idea of that? Okay. So the next clair would be claircognizant. And this is, I would call the ability of clear knowing. You just know. You just know. You can't explain how and where the information came to you. You just know. And there's some people that are really good at this. I know a lot of moms as well that, their kids are like, how do you know? Okay, we just know. We know. but a little bit larger scale than that, what's happening with this just knowing. You're not using any of your five senses. It's just essentially just downloading to your brain. It's not being analyzed in any way. These are things that just come to you and you know to be true. So again, it's coming through your mind. It's not something where it's this gut feeling. It's not coming through the heart center. It's not coming through the third eye. Claircognizant, you are essentially from your spirit guides, your angels, it could be loved ones, your highest and most loving self. It is downloading, and you are knowing this as truth. And it's pretty cool. So finally coming down to clairsentient, which is very similar to empathic. So I'm going to talk about them both together. So both of them are what I would call a heightened form of empathy. So you're essentially feeling and experiencing the energy of others. The difference that I would say mainly between a clairsentient and someone who's empathic, clairsentient is going to pick up on those, past, present, future feelings and emotions of not only people, but also they can pick up on these feelings of other things. So places, items, objects, a home, a building, and they, you can, in addition to this, and something that to forewarn, and I sort of just, as you're deepening and working with being a clairsentient or an empath, something that I find to be very important, because this is something that I was doing and I didn't know. And what happens is you will find that your mood all of a sudden fluctuates for no reason. And quite honestly, and I'll just personally share, this would actually cause anxiety, depression, because you're like, what is wrong with me? This is just, it's intense, and it's something that you can't explain. It's like, I'm having the best day, and now all of a sudden, I'm sad, or, and it's hard. And my suggestion when you're working with this, or maybe this is happening to you and you don't know, check in with yourself when you first wake up in the morning. Lay there in bed before you do anything, and just survey, how do you feel? Because nothing has crossed your path yet. If you're in a relationship, you're in the bed with someone, intentionally separate yourself from their energy, anyone who's within any radius of you, and set the intention that you are specifically focusing on the energy of yourself, and just see what you feel like. This is now your barometer. And now what you want to do is, as you go through your day and you see your mood swing, now you need to actually get into this analytical mind and say, okay, has anything happened to me that would warrant this? You actually have to analyze your mood and your change or your shift. So now now after that, you need to look around you. And because you have this heightened sense of empathy, you can then start to work on figuring out, who are you receiving this energy from that's within your energy field. And a lot of times people that are empathic and clairsentient, we're typically the people who always want to help others and fix their lives and get them. And usually the reason that you naturally do that is because you're trying to heal that energy around you subconsciously, so that starts making you feel good. So a lot of times these people that are empathic or clairsentient, you're the givers. You're the ones who don't do things for yourselves, but in the end result, you actually are, unknowingly. But that would be my suggestion for that. With these two intuitive forms of receiving information, coming in with that as well, you can have sensations of, which I touched on a little bit before, of, perhaps even tingling in the hands, a tapping sensation. You're just more in tune with the energies of feeling and receiving. So now that we've touched on that, we only have a short amount of time, so I feel like I'm sort of moving through fast. How do we develop these intuitive abilities, which is really what we're here for? As I said before, we're all unique, and we all have our own special gifts and talents, and there's no one right way about doing this. Find what resonates with you. We talked about various ways to receive information. One of them might have spoken to you. It might be something that you just realized you're already doing. Start there. So go with what you're drawn to. Then, what I would say with that, make it fun. If you're into art, use use art. You might be drawn to crystals. You could work with a pendulum. And these are things too that as you start noticing synchronistic events, and once you set that intention that you want to start receiving information, all of these things are going to start coming across your path. And they're all there to guide you and help you. And, we're supposed to embrace these things. And, just try new things. That's really what life's about. Play, have fun, and try new things and see where it takes you. It's really, it's a beautiful journey, and, we're meant to grow. We're not meant to, just wake up in the morning, eat, sleep, repeat. It's an adventure, and you just have fun with it. So, do you have any questions or?
Not really, to be honest.
So, I know we're coming close to the end of the time. There will be an intermediate session, and I think what we're going to be doing at that time will be some exercises with each type of, perhaps with each type of the clairs, where we'll work on some relaxation techniques, ways to dive in that way, take things a little bit further, maybe have some feedback on, since it will be an intermediate class, I would hope that people are working with, receiving intuitive messages, and we can use that as like a shared, time to share and, get ideas from each other. So, well, thanks for joining me. This was
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. Thanks.